and welcome to this segment called Reading a Pattern and Fabric Selection. Today you will be learning what pattern to purchase. We'll discuss the pros and cons of several of the different types of patterns. You'll learn where to find the sizes on the pattern so you'll know what pattern to buy. It's very frustrating coming home all excited to sew only to find you bought the wrong pattern size. We'll also learn what type of fabric you will be using and how much to buy. This is probably the most time-consuming but also my favorite part of the whole project. And lastly, what notions to purchase so your project will come together nicely. Here we are at our local craft and fabric store, Joann's. If you don't have a Joann's, don't worry. You just need to find a fabric store that sells patterns. Another option is to order patterns online if you don't have a store near you. Hopefully, you remembered to bring your measurements. This is where you're going to need them. Some of my favorite pattern books are Simplicity, Butterick, and McCall's. I can usually find what I need in them, and they occasionally have sales on their patterns, which is an added bonus. I try to stay away from Burda patterns, only because they're written just a little differently, and I'm not an expert, so anything out of the ordinary can sometimes throw me for a loop. As you can see, each book is organized with different tabs, so you can easily find what you are looking for. Once you find a pattern that you like, you need to remember the number. They're filed in the cabinets under their number. I am terrible at remembering the numbers, so I use my phone to take pictures of the pattern. If you don't have that handy, plan ahead and bring a little notebook and pen. Sometimes the pattern you are after is sold out, so it's a good idea when looking at the pattern books to find an alternative pattern just in case, and remember to get its number also. Okay, now is the time to look at the size of pattern you will need to purchase. Each pattern comes with several different sizes included with it. So you will need to use your measurements that you took at home to find out which size is best for you. In our case, we're looking for a pattern that will fit a waist of 26.5 inches and hips of 35.5 inches. All the information that we need should be located somewhere on the outside of the pattern. One word of caution here. Pattern sizes do not correlate sometimes to your real pant size, so always go with the measurements that you took. If your measurements are a little in between one size and the other, then sometimes on the back of a pattern, they give you what is called the finished size measurements. And this is where you can look to see where your measurements will fall in the finished size, and that way you can kind of judge a little bit more closely what size of pattern you will need. As you can see from the pattern that we are using, the measurements that we have are 35.5 for the hips, so that would fall under the teens or adults size small. So that's the pattern that we would be using, so we know that it's on here and this is the pattern that we would need to purchase. Now that we have our pattern picked out and we know the correct size of the pattern, we move on to the fun part, choosing our fabric. If you'll notice on the back of the pattern, there's a little table that will let you know how much fabric you need to purchase based on the size you will be using. In our case, because we are using a size small, we will be needing 2 5/8 yards if we are using a 45-inch bolt, or we would need 2 1/4 yards of fabric if we were using a 60-inch bolt. Most bolt sizes at Joann's are 45 inches. But if you're not sure and you want to get this right, when you take it up to the cutting counter, show them your pattern and say you're not sure whether you're using a 45 or a 60, and they'll be sure to help you. We're going to take a look at the back of a pattern again, and here you're going to find suggested fabric types. I'd also like to say at this point, keep in mind the season that you're going to be making these for, because that might play a role on what type of fabric that you will get. We're choosing for this project flannel since it's winter time in our area when I recorded this. Here's one word of caution. Try to stay away from plaids for your first project. If you don't line them up right, sometimes they don't look very good. I also would caution you to stay away from fabric that has a very specific pattern or words that are directional, because if you don't get this right, one pattern will be the right way. The other pant leg is going to have all of the words upside down, which just doesn't look great for your first project. Now is the fun part. You get to choose your fabric. It's a little overwhelming because there's so much to choose from, but we like to find stuff that fits our personalities. And this trip was a little more difficult because I tasked the girls with finding something that all three of us can enjoy, which made our shopping trip a little bit longer, but that's okay. We had fun. Hopefully you too will also have fun on this adventure. Now, once you've got your fabric selected and it's in hand, you've got your pattern, you know what size, you know how much fabric you're going to have, you need to go have your fabric cut. Now here's a hint. Sometimes Joann's can be busy. If there's a lot of people waiting in line at the cutting counter, choose your number right as soon as you have your fabric selected and then go shopping for your notions. Just keep in mind you need to listen for that number. If there's not a lot of people in line, feel free to pick your number, wait patiently. Sometimes there's some great people in line that you could strike up a conversation with and learn a thing or two because everybody's willing to share what project that they're working on. When your number is called, you'll take your fabric to the counter and let the sales clerk know how much you want. This is the great time to ask if you have a 45-inch bolt or a 60-inch bolt. And if you have any other questions for the project, now is the time to ask before they cut the fabric, and they can help you out on that. All right, so far we found our pattern, figured out the size, found out how much fabric to buy, picked out our fabric, had it cut. Now's the last part, notions. Notions are just the extra things that the project will need. In our case, we'll need elastic and we'll also need thread. Here's a list on the pattern where you will find all of the notions. Sometimes on the back of patterns, the notions are put in different spots. So in this case, with the pattern that we are using, it says that we will need elastic and it also says thread. As you can see, there are many, many different choices of different thread. In our case, the pattern just says thread. It doesn't really give us any indication of what type of thread. So in this case, whether you're working with a cotton or a flannel, I would just stick with the cotton thread. You still have tons of choices. It washes well, it sews well. You kind of can't go wrong with cotton thread. Your final step now is to pay for your purchase. And just to let you know, if you happen to be a teacher and you are going to Joann's, bring in your ID badge. They'll sign you up for their teacher discount, and that is 15% off all of your purchases, even if it's on sale. If you aren't a teacher and you are a planner, well, check their ads online or in the flyers that come in the paper. Sometimes you'll find 50% off one item sale. This will help quite a bit with your fabrics or your pattern purchases. You are one step closer to getting these pants done, but you have one very important thing to do when you bring your fabric home. You need to wash and dry it according to the directions on the end of the bolt. This is a very important process because if you don't get it done, what could happen is once you get your pants made and you wash them and dry them for the first time, they can shrink. And that's not very fun when you want to wear your nice comfy lounge pants and they're tight. So nobody likes a pair of tight lounge pants. You want them to be comfortable. So please wash and dry to pre-shrink your fabric. Please stay tuned for the next video, which is called Cutting Out Your Pattern. Thanks for watching.